Today is July 4th, 2023. This past weekend, I decided to take a short trip down into Kentucky to trace the steps of my fifth great uncle, Daniel Boone. Now, I know that there's a lot of people who claim lineage to Daniel Boone, and they try to claim lineage to a lot of famous people. I will show you the chart that I have that links me to Daniel. Daniel's brother Israel Boone and his wife Martha Farmer died at a young age in Yadkin Valley, North Carolina. And when they died, Daniel and Rebecca took their children to raise. Their daughter, Elizabeth Boone, is my fourth great-grandmother. I will take you to the site of the Blue Licks battlefield. That is just south of Maysville, Kentucky. That is where Daniel and the pioneers fought the last battle of the Revolutionary War. Daniel's son, Israel, who was a namesake of his brother, was killed there along with scores of other pioneers. And they're buried in a common grave, a mass grave there at the Blue Licks battlefield. I will take you to the grave of Edward Boone, who was Daniel's brother. They called him Ned. And he was killed by Shawnee Indians on a raid of Daniel's hunting party. They're close to Paris, Kentucky. From there, we go to Boonesboro and down to a little village called Red House, Kentucky. Red House is 5 miles south of Boonesboro on the same road, and it is where my fourth great-grandfather, George Baxter, lived and died and is buried. He died in 1834. So the Baxter family definitely had connections to the Boone family, but my lineage actually comes through the Spencer line. My grandmother, Nettie Spencer, her mother, and her grandmother, and her great-grandmother, and on back to, straight back in the female line to Elizabeth Boone is where I have the connection to the Boone family. So take time, watch this video, like and subscribe to it. If you like my video and subscribe, it'll help me greatly. I appreciate it, and you have a great 4th of July. One thing I forgot to add was that I have had my DNA ran, and I have several matches to multiple descendants of Israel Boone. So, and I am a genealogist, and I take pride in my research. I do not like to rely on other people's research, but there comes a time whenever you hit those brick walls that sometimes you have to rely on that research. However, it is backed up with DNA evidence. Enjoy the video. I'm here today at Blue Licks battlefield near Maysville, Kentucky. This is the site of the last battle of the Revolutionary War. At this battle, Daniel Boone and other pioneer soldiers from Boonesboro and the surrounding area encountered Shawnee Indians and Canadian British soldiers. And the pioneers were defeated here. And I'm about to go down to the burial site of the soldiers who were killed here. one of which was Israel Boone, Daniel Boone's son. Inside the small enclosure across the creek in the field over here is the grave of Edward Boone, brother of Daniel Boone. Edward was killed by Shawnee Indians in a raid. Him and Daniel was out hunting, and they were attacked. Daniel was actually not with Ed at the time. He actually went by Ned. They called him Ned. His name was Edward. And Shawnee Indians attacked Edward when he was by himself and killed him and scalped him, I believe. And Daniel came along and found him and found his brother dead. And the Indians were all around Daniel, and he escaped somewhere into what they call the cane breaks. And at the time, there would have been large patches of cane, almost like bamboo, here in Kentucky, and they were just huge and very dense patches of cane. And Daniel escaped into the cane breaks and got away from the Indians and escaped being killed. The Indians actually thought that they had killed Daniel because Ned looked so much like Daniel, and they had celebrated that they killed Daniel Boone when actually they killed his brother Ned. So this is his final resting place. They came back later and buried him, Daniel did, and this is where he was buried, inside that enclosure there. This is, the address here is 870 C Road, Carlisle, Kentucky. It's between Carlisle, Kentucky and Paris. And that is Ned Boone's grave across in the field over there. You can get to it. You have to cross the creek. I think there's a place right up there where you can cross and get over to it. They keep it mowed down and keep it well groomed. I'm glad to see that. But it's very beautiful here in this little place. It's the old stone walls are just amazing. Big stone walls up there around the curve. Just a small, tiny, almost single lane road here that this is on. Once again, it's 870 C Road, Carlisle, Kentucky. Part of a little getaway me and my wife has taken this weekend. We were at Blue Licks Battlefield earlier, and after we leave here, we're going to our hotel room in Winchester, Kentucky. We come down below Boonesboro, we're at a little crossroads here on State Route 388. It's called Red House, and it is just a crossroads. Not much here, but somewhere here, little tractor there is pretty cool. Somewhere here, my fourth great grandfather is buried. His name was George Baxter. And so this is kind of an ancestral stomping grounds. Also, it's just a few miles south of Boonesboro, not very far from Boonesboro. We passed Boonesboro to get here. The Baxters definitely lived in the Boonesboro area during the time of Daniel Boone and the settlement of Boonesboro. So I'm pretty confident that there was some kind of connection. But this is cool just to be here. Here today at Fort Boonesboro State Park in Kentucky. Right in front of me is the site of the original Fort Boonesboro. The stone walls is not the actual footprint of the fort, but the fort was a lot larger than this. But this is the area right here where the fort stood. There are some pictures that will be included in the video that will show the monument inside and some other things. But this is pretty cool. We were just down at Red House, Kentucky, which is just about 6 or 7 miles south of here on Otter Creek. And Otter Creek was where Daniel Boone, where the Boone Trace came through. And so this area here is just down below this area where I said Red House, Kentucky is where my fourth great grandfather is buried somewhere, probably in a little unmarked grave on a hilltop somewhere. He died in 1834, and on a monument here somewhere near Boonesboro is Colonel Edward Baxter, who was one of the original settlers in the area. He wasn't with the first group that came in, but did live in the fort at one point. So I'm confident, although not 100% positive, that my family came into Kentucky with Daniel Boone and the first settlers. My DNA does trace me back on my grandmother's side, not the Baxter side, but the Spencer side, traces me back to Israel Boone, Daniel Boone's brother, through all the women, my grandmother's mother, her mother before her, and then so on and forth, back to Elizabeth Boone, who was the daughter of Israel Boone, Daniel's older brother. Israel and his wife died at a young age, and their children were raised by Daniel and Rebecca. So my fourth or fifth great grandmother was actually raised by Daniel Boone and his wife Rebecca. So that's pretty cool.